get ready to kick things off. I'm so excited to have all of you are here with us today, and it's truly my honor to welcome you all. I'm Savola Frazier. I am one of the board members here for Black Innovation Leaders Leadership in Florida, and I'm delighted to serve you all today. We are excited about today's format and what we're going to be getting into. But let me just share with you a little bit about Black Innovation Leaders of Florida. And so we bring together, I'd like to think we bring together bold thinkers, innovative leaders, ambitious game changers to redefine what's really possible in our world and really what's facing our communities. And so when we think about the things that really face our communities, we have five pillars that we focus in on. And those are public policy, procurement, talent, education, and capital. And these pieces are so important because they really affect the entire ecosystem of our community across the board. And so there are a couple of things that we've done this year that's been so exciting. For those of you who follow us, you know that we have our innovation tour where we go from different parts of the state of Florida. So we've been to as far north as Pensacola this year. We've been as far south as Miami area this year. And of course, we can't miss out on Tampa and the Central Florida area at all. And so in each one of these places, what we've designed our programming to be in these places is to really tap into what's happening on the ground from an innovation perspective in those areas. And so this will continue with us as we go into 2025. So we hope that you would join us on the journey as we continue to move forward with that. Another thing that we've done is we had a partnership, tremendous partnership with the U.S. Patent Trade Office, where we continue to launch what we called our IP Launchpad, which is really informing our community on how you can tap into the resources at a federal level to protect your inventions and your per se intellectual property. And so we're super excited for you all to join us in this journey and to share it with folks that you know about an opportunity that we currently have to continue to push this forward through our partnership with Patent Hacks. And so I'll share a little bit more about that later, but we're excited about it. And that with that partnership is going to give us the opportunity to give you access to self education, so you can do a basically your own path to get there, but to learn as much as you can about trademark and patents so that you can protect, right? So that you can protect your creativity, so that you protect your inventions as we continue to move forward, because we know that that's super important for what we do. But today's gathering is no exception to the work that we're doing. We're really wanting to explore cutting edge innovation, discuss around the future of leadership, and sharing actionable strategies to overcoming the challenges of today's dynamic landscape. Now, listen, our goal is not to pick sides. We are in this space to really to elevate everyone to be able to move forward together, because our goal is not to be on a side, but to really help. What is that old saying? That a rising tide raises all boats. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to be the rising tide that raises all the boats in this room so that we can all move forward together and create this dynastic wealth, as I'm sure one of my partners are going to share about today, into our time together. Well, listen, I've been talking a little bit too long. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get ready. We're going to turn it over to Dr. Eugene. And listen, you all are in for a treat. So before we really get into things together, I want you to take a moment. You got the link for today's session. I want you to go ahead and share that with your friends, with your colleagues. Let them know that we are live and this conversation is about to go down. Yes, y'all heard that voice change? This conversation is about to go down. Yes, we're about to have it. And really, we started this conversation a few weeks ago, right before our presidential election, really helping people to kind of wrap themselves around resiliency from a mental health perspective, and really to champion the things that we needed to know in order to really live and thrive in the spaces that we were in at that moment in time. And so now that we recognize we got the results, we know what's about to happen, we know what's about to go down, well, we still need a level of resiliency. And when we think about resiliency, it's our ability and power that we have to bounce back. And so I don't know about y'all, but anybody feel like y'all got some bounce back power in you? like if y'all was thinking for something else, I can't help it. It's in my blood. I'm going to motivate you. Right. And so we may, sometimes you may feel underestimated. You may feel like, hey, they're not seeing my full value, my potential. And that gives you this ability to be resilient so that you can bounce back stronger than what you've ever done before. So today we're talking all about business and tech talent in this new political landscape. And with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Wanda Eugene to get us started today.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you for opening us up and motivating us, Sorola. And I would like to start off on a point that Sorola mentioned. BILF is a nonpartisan group. And so we are really just having a conversation. Like we said, we started this before the election and want to continue. Outside of what's happening politically, technically, there's just a lot changing, right? And so building resilient um, people, innovators, is a really critical need, and taking the message beyond those that are able to attend this session is really important, and that's really what we want to drive home. So I think this is also an exciting time because we also have to figure out how to innovate differently, right? A lot of the things that we've been doing, we're going to change. We're being forced to change, and that opens the doors of how we innovate in these spaces. And so that's kind of where we want to center our conversation. So take this as a charge, into yourself of how you're going to innovate differently and how are you going to empower those around you to innovate differently. So without further ado, I would like us to start off by having our panelists introduce themselves. So we'll go through our panelists, and I'll put on the spotlight, but we'll go through and get our panelists to start off introducing themselves, and then we'll jump into our questions for the sake of time. So I'll start off with Mr. Davis.
Yeah, happy to kick us off here. Hello, everyone. Ishvaris Davis, go by Ish. So I work a couple of different hats, executive director of the Onyx Group. So what we really think about is the union of emerging technology and Black communities and how we're able to take advantage of that. And we specifically focus on policy implications and also building technology as well, which we're getting into. Outside of that role, also work at a startup. I've worked at Instagram before, done some investing, advising. So really into the startup space, also a bit tech as well and now policy. So really excited to be here today and hopefully share some insights.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Mr. Davis. We appreciate you joining us today. Next, we'll go to Dr. White.
Um, okay, there we go. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Latanya White. I am this is really new, so but my publicist will jack me up when she sees me if I don't introduce myself as an award-winning entrepreneurship researcher. The work that I do elevates and focuses on the relationship between Black entrepreneurship and the racial wealth gap and what dynastic wealth means for closing that gap. How do we, as a collective, learn how to package, protect, and pass down our wealth for 3 consecutive generations, these 5 different forms of wealth? So, in the policy space, what I do is work with different agencies to amplify the lived experience of Black and Brown founders and how our ancestral narrative and the policies that have affected our elders and ancestors have gotten us to this point today. More than that, I consider myself a Black wealth futurist where I am looking down the line and how do we get, 60 years from now, how do we operationalize that in the work that we do day to day?
Awesome, awesome. Good stuff. Thank you, Dr. Wright. And then Rose Lagise, let's go to you next.
Hi, I am Rose Legis. I'm the CEO of RL Engineering Tech Solutions. We're an experienced firm with expertise in technology, business solutions, engineering, and also have a firm commitment on advocating for and supporting micro and small businesses, particularly those led by women and minorities. We focus on a lot of our programs on helping them secure corporate and government contracts and also providing programming on government contract readiness and minority certification and just apply to diversity overall. We're involved in a lot of research, data research, and research on issues that impact those underestimated groups. And I'm happy to be here and provide to the conversation.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you. So I'm really excited. This is going to be a great conversation. I realize I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Wanda Eugene. I'm a board member on BILF, focus on the education unit. I am a co-founder of Deep Designs. We're a UX company, and I'm a former ecosystem builder. So really spent about 7 years of my career focused on women and minority-owned businesses, launching and growing tech businesses. And I consult for a couple different investor firms and universities in that space, which is a changing space, which is a good place to kind of kick us off, right? There's a lot of changes underway. And so one of the things I want to start off by talking about is policy changes. And with every administration, there's policy changes that we're expecting. But just kind of thinking about in the space that we are, I'll start off with you, Mr. Davis. What are some federal and state level regulated changes should small businesses and contractors prioritize to remain compliant and competitive?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will say that like everything here is kind of projection. We're not quite sure how any of this will work out. I think a couple of things in particular to pay attention to. One is going to be tariffs and how that's actually operationalized.
Mhm.
Obviously, if people are selling physical goods, that's going to have an impact depending on which sector that you're in. There are some numbers that have been thrown around out there in terms of what we actually want those tariffs to be.
Mhm.
So I would say that's a major thing to kind of pay attention to. Other things I think about from a technology landscape, one is going to be uh, kind of how we regulate technology. We what we've seen before, and even now, especially with the advent of artificial intelligence, generative artificial intelligence, is that a lot of the work is going to be done at the state level, and that's going to look quite different from place to place. So there's already been a lot of work done out there. California actually got really close to passing a landmark kind of artificial intelligence bill.
Mhm.
However, it didn't make it all the way through. But those are the kinds of things that I would pay attention to if you're in the technology sector. And there are going to be changes across really every sector. So if we look at uh, people that may have clean energy compliance or non-compliance, like I think that's going to change quite a lot as we move forward. How we think about autonomous vehicles, automotives, like all those things are kind of up for being changed. I would say from just a policy perspective, the thing I would always recommend is just kind of really dialing in on the things that will affect you and your business. And also like finding the sources and resources of information. So that may be newsletters, that there may be organizations like this that are giving out really in-depth technical information and just kind of staying up to date. Like we talked about the election, the first 100 days are going to be a whirlwind, and there's going to be a lot to keep up with. So I think it's important for everyone to just kind of stay tapped in there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And that leads me to you, Dr. White. With just these evolving policy changes, and even just some of the things Mr. Davis mentioned, what do you predict in terms of the impact systematic barriers faced
Mhm.
by Black entrepreneurs, and what role does advocacy play in mitigating these challenges?
Well, I mean, as many of us know, the US has a long history of systemic barriers when it comes to wealth creation. I've only studied the last 150 years of that. So, from the failure of the Freedmen's Bank in 1865 to, what we experienced coming out of COVID and the PPP loans and all of those things. One of the things that I found in my work and my research and in my advocacy, and I actually was taught this. So I'm always a student, right?
Mhm.
I was serving as the scheduler for a Hill Day with the Bow Collective, and we had members, the Black Owners and Women's Collective. We had Bow members visiting um, elected officials all across the hill. And one of our Bo sisters asked, well, what are our Black advocacy groups not doing that our Hispanic counterparts are?
Mhm.
Or actually was in the reverse, what are our Hispanic counterparts doing that we aren't doing, where we aren't able to really push the needle? And his response, it was a staffer in a CVC member's office. His response was, they don't just come once a year. They don't
Mhm.
just have an annual Heal Day.
Mhm.
Those groups, those advocacy groups are consistent, just like we know as business owners, one sale,
Yeah.
one meeting is not going to make the sale. So
Yeah.
it was this point of reflection for us, like, well, we really have to apply some of the same marketing and business principles to how do we want to affect change through our advocacy. And it can't just be one annual Heal Day. It comes
Mhm.
from relationship building, it comes from those consistent messages. And then, of course, like asking for the business. This is the call to action that we have for your caucus, for your agency, for your procurement spend. And it's just
Mhm.
really a matter of taking all of those best practice business ideals into our advocacy work.
And that is that is a very powerful statement. And then so I think I want to jump to a question in terms of how do we do that, right? Like what does that look like in becoming this resilient type workforce? And I'm gonna start with you, Dr. White, just on that same list. Like, what initiatives or programs have proven to be effective in equipping underrepresented minority communities with skills needed to thrive in the tech industry?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And as Ish was talking, I was like, "Oh, this is so good." I recently launched or am in the process of building out a legislative affairs offering for micro businesses, Black-owned micro businesses, and that's because of what I've seen. To your question, Dr. Eugene, there is a caucus for everything. So most of us are familiar with the Congressional Black Caucus, but did you also know there's a congressional caucus on virtual, augmented, and mixed reality technologies? Did you know that there is a congressional high tech caucus? There is a caucus for technology and financial payments. So, to your question, a part of it is first we got to know who the people are. What are they working on? Who are our elected officials, like in our voting districts? What caucuses and committees are they on? And then, by the way, the way my tax dollars is set up, I could come up and see you and we could talk about some things on a pretty regular basis. And that's one of the things that I experienced when I literally stumbled upon the Congressional Financial Literacy and Wealth Creation Caucus. I said, well, where y'all been all my life? So, but it's a matter of being connected, to folks like Ish, to other policy and advocacy players who know where your people are, who know what bills are coming to the floor that's going to affect your career and your business pipeline.
Mm. So I want to throw that question to Mr. Davis. How can policymakers and community organizations collaborate to foster a more resilient workforce in tech in light of what Dr. White just talked about?
Yeah, that was really great. I was gonna drop a link to all the caucuses there are. There are so many that like people wouldn't even imagine, but they're there. Um, I would say kind of the operational thing there is like working together. How do we work together to do this? So, as an example, I give this example quite frequently. I work with a youth organization, and there are quite a few like youth technology bills going through Congress at the moment. Kids Online Safety Act is one of them. COPPA 2.0 is another one of them. And they are literally college students for the most part. They have one person that just graduated college, so she's maybe 23, and they've been like working all over the hill, and I've been kind of like helping to advise them. But like they've done an incredible amount of work for like four college students and one person that just graduated college. But going back to Dr. White's point, they're there every day. They're building their relationships. They're working with both sides in ways that many others aren't. So what they've been able to do is actually like move quite effectively in this space. And as like once again, I think four or five, mostly teenagers and one person that's 23, they've been able to move like some pretty landmark legislation and it hasn't passed yet. but that just speaks to where the opportunities are. So I would say a couple of things I would kind of recommend is Congress in general is just like a conglomeration of people. And as you have proximity and access to these people in various channels, whatever those channels are, that's going to provide leverage to get things done. We've mentioned the Congressional Black Caucus here. They actively look for organizations and groups to be able to give them the information that they need so they can advocate internally for the things that we might need in the broader community. Now, things may not always be aligned, but there's always that negotiation space. So that's something I always say is like, before you can move a mountain, you got to be able to like start small, move something little, and start to build your way up. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is people understanding the role that policy actually plays in our ecosystem. So going to some historical bills like CHIPS and Science, where the goal is we have kind of tech innovation on both coasts predominantly. How can we spread this across the country more? And there are opportunities there for really anywhere in the United States to apply for this grant and build a consortium. So it's community organizations plus you'll have nonprofits in there, you'll have your private corporations, you'll have your capital partners. How do we come together and think about a local ecosystem and say like, hey, we have these resources uh, for clean energy here. How can we come together as a group and apply for something like this? And last thing I'll say, there's a lot of organizations didn't know that this existed. So I actually had a chance to work on one of these in New York, actually. And I took it upon myself to like reach out to a lot of community-based organizations and say like, hey, we're building a consortium over here. Would you be interested? And they're like, wait, we can do that? And it's like, yeah, you can. But like if there isn't someone being intentional there, or on their parts, they're not like actively or proactively finding those opportunities, it's
Mhm.
just never going to happen. So I think it's on both sides to like one from kind of the groups that tend to have these connections to like help others get involved. And if you're not
Mhm.
involved, kind of proactively finding those opportunities. So it works. It just takes a lot of work to get there, and those opportunities are there.
And I think that's a really good point. And I'm going to bounce this to you, Rose, based off of what Mr. Davis was just talking about. As a small business owner who's, leveraged different skills and tools and resources to navigate this space, I would like to hear kind of your perspective of what do you think are like some of the critical tools as a small business owner that are essential to take advantage of the opportunities that Dr. White and Mr. Davis mentioned.
Uh, Thank you. First critical tool is working together. I mean, I don't know if it's a tool, but it's a strategy. Actually, just based what Ish was just talking about when he's talking about renewable energy. I partnered up with uh, three other Black women, and we worked a contract through NREL earlier this year for renewable energy grants that they awarded to that was focused on rural communities. Again, so that's on the opposite side where it was given to in the groups that got these funds were made up of for-profit and nonprofit. And when we got into and we were working, we provided technical assistance to these groups. The first thing was, when was this awarded? How was this out there? I mean, we talked to some of the groups there. The only requirement was to be working on renewable energy project that impacted rural communities. Anyone could have applied for it. But again, we go back to not knowing. We don't know what we don't know. And so there's a lot of opportunities out there that we unfortunately are not aware of and don't take advantage of. And how do we take advantage of that? Working together. It's hard trying to go and find information, especially if you don't know where to find it. But when we work together with other small businesses, other nonprofit organizations, I have a network, multiple networks of individuals who have expertise in different areas. And these are areas that I don't have expertise in. And so I think a lot of times we as business owners, we try to be the expert for everything, and we don't need to do that. If my expertise is not policy or government, find somebody who does, find an organization who does, right? Connect with them, link with them and partner up with them so that way you can get that information without having to try to do everything yourself. So that's one of the first things is partnership, working with other small businesses, but also working with the community organizations, collaborating and sharing your efforts. The other part that I'll say is also when it comes to even the services that you provide or the products, you got to be innovative. You know, there's a lot of money right now in innovation, especially AI and cybersecurity. And not only is there a lot of opportunity and money in there, we are the experts in that. The small business owners who are building products are seen finally as the experts of those innovation. And so when the government is looking to improve their infrastructure, their cybersecurity infrastructure, because they're concerned about, you know, getting hacked or data breaches, they're now opening the door and giving a lot of that money that they used to give to uh, you know, nonprofits or other organizations. They're not creating opportunities for small businesses because they realize the subject matter experts are coming from these small businesses, and they're already working and have been working in these fields for a long time, and they're creating this innovation, and they want to make sure that they tap into that and bring that up to the government level. So a lot of opportunity there. We just got to work together and then be more innovative in the services and the products that we provide. And innovation doesn't have to be a whole new product. It could literally be what you provided, but maybe hyper focus on a certain area, or just expand your thought, or even just add a quick you know, modification to fit a certain industry.
Okay. Okay. And back on the skills and tools, Rose, I wanted to inquire. One of the things in my experience, working with an agency that used to fund small businesses, one of my biggest frustrations used to be a lot of the small businesses, though they were innovative, they had the ideas, they did not have the proper tools in place or
Right.
certifications. Or they didn't know how to structure their offerings in a way that I could defend them in a room when we're trying to discuss, like, okay, who are the vendors we want to go with, right? And so that became as much as I want to fund. So even as a grant reviewer, or like that was always my frustration. It's like I would see, you know, these small businesses, especially minority-owned businesses. I'm like, this person would be perfect. But then at the same time, there's a critical thing, a piece that's missing where I can, in good faith, put them forward, right? Like, because then it's a credibility issue on my behalf, or you know, like, or so there's always issues. So can you speak to like those pieces in terms of the skills and tools aspect of it?
Right. So those pieces, there's different avenues that they can take. One, I know with NASA has their technology transfer where you can leverage the technologies, and even with AI patents and different technologies that they have within your business. And again, it takes just reaching out to them and creating that partnership. They have the SBIRs and STTRs opportunities where individuals can take what they're building, get funding for it, and build that out, and also get support. Then there's a lot of organizations and programs that are out there that are offering the support to actually dig into and build out a small businesses and help them with their product development. I know we just had a round through the SBA for the I'm missing it now, but they were focused on innovation and to support small businesses that were doing data, AI, cybersecurity, and providing support there. So there's opportunities that are out there. I think what it's going to take is education to educate those individuals on those opportunities, that folks, you know, they can get support for their products. There's also opportunities through the government and different programs. And there's also opportunities through the college where you yourself, you know, that's where, you know, you came from in terms of having programs in there, accelerators, incubators that they can join and actually get support in building out their products and getting funding to get more to buy the technology that they need. In the funding, I know, Dr. White, we've talked about this. Certain cities and states actually have a fund for small businesses to get money to basically improve on their tools and software that they use. Again, all this comes back to not knowing what we don't know. It's out there, but how do we get that information out there so that way folks can know they can tap into these funds, because other people know about them and they get those opportunities. But there is a lot of opportunity out there for them to get support in that area.
Yeah, and this actually brings to a question to you, Mr. Davis, about how policy experts can help small businesses identify and secure funding opportunities created by government spending trends, especially now that, like, it's something you mentioned earlier, right? A lot of that is going to be now allocated on the state level instead of the federal level. So how does a small business position itself to take advantage of that, or to be in the know of how they can leverage policy to benefit them in this sector?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the first thing that I didn't know before I started working in Congress is pay attention to appropriations. That's where the negotiations happen. That's where how much money is going to be given to the executive branch is decided. That's how high-level programs are decided. And obviously, the executive branch gets to kind of interpret some of those, but like the money's there. So you can almost follow the trail of the money before it even gets to name your agency of choice by what Congress was doing. So I think that's one way that policy players can, in particular, uh, provide high leverage to a business, and that like you kind of know what's coming before it happens. And a lot of things that happen in appropriations are just like reappropriating things that have already happened. So an example is the National Quantum Initiative Act. I believe it was enacted in 2018, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a little bit earlier than that. But the idea is that like the United States in general needs to continue to bolster their quantum capabilities, given that like there's massive cybersecurity risk. So obviously there needs to be investment there. There need to be programs from like an education perspective, from a workforce perspective, all those things. And you can literally go and read the act and see exactly what they're trying to do, and then how various agencies try to operationalize that. That's an example. You can also see these on state levels as well, where like a state wants to make progress in a specific area, they allocate money to that area and they'll have programs and other things associated with that.
Mhm.
Um, for the most part, the average person isn't going to go read a bill.
Right.
They're all online if you want to. So a policy person can kind of go and break that down and make it a little bit more digestible and kind of target like, here's exactly where your business may fit into this particular statute, and this is where you might want to look to either get funding, think about potential partnership opportunities, those kinds of things.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. So here's how we're going to think this through, right? I'm an entrepreneur, right? I got my policy person and they're telling me, here's the appropriation, here's what's coming down the pipeline. Boom. I need a strategy. Dr. White, what is my strategy? How do what is my strategy to get some of this funding based off of what I now know of in terms of appropriations and policy changes?
From what I find, from what I'm seeing, and certainly Ish and Rose, y'all correct me if I'm wrong. For the most part, the appropriations can only be given to a nonprofit organization. So if you as an entrepreneur are not affiliated with a nonprofit, here we go talking about collaboration
Mhm.
and partnerships, right? So it's either a fiscal sponsor that you are going to work with, or it's a nonprofit whose mission, values, and goals align with the work that you do. Once you know where that alignment is, now you want to make sure that you can, especially on the federal side, they have what's called a federal nexus. Like you have to be able to say, this project, this program, whatever you're requesting these federal appropriations for or state appropriations for, that there is a demonstrated need for it in the same language that it appears to be important to
Mhm.
the government agencies. So know who your partners are, especially for fiscal sponsorship nonprofit. Know where the alignment is between what solution that you're providing and what the problem is, like how the problem is described by that particular district. And then if you're doing it now, like if you're starting today, you might need to wait until the fiscal year 2026
Mm.
appropriations, because there's relationships that need to be built, right? There's when I was speaking with a Florida state senator, one of his question was, well, do you have data, right? So here you go, Rose. Like, do you have data that supports your impact, that shows what you've done? Like, we could talk about this, but what does the data say? So if
Mhm.
you don't have the data or the relationships, and that's okay because the time is going to go by really fast. For the most part, I want to say on the federal side, this is on the state side, this was on the Florida Senate side, the applications open November 1st. They're going to close sometime in April. So that's a short window to build a strong enough relationship with an elected official and their staff. Oh my God, like y'all, we cannot forget the not just gatekeepers, right? But we can't forget that the people in the office make the office run. They are doing the research, they are scraping the web. That's how the US Senate, I submitted 2 congressional testimonies for the Senate Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship. I was introduced to them through the Black Innovation Alliance, but somebody in that office was doing their homework on me because they invited me months later. It literally was like 6 months later to submit a written testimony. So make sure that your web presence, that there is some social proof. And I'm not just talking about like Instagram, right? Like, are you a thought leader? Are there LinkedIn long form posts? Have there been news articles about the work that you're doing that you're going to be seeking these appropriations for? So it's not as linear
Mhm.
as we might like to believe. And again, as entrepreneurs, as innovators, everything that we already know about what it takes to make innovation happen is the same characteristics and traits that we have to apply to this appropriations request process.
Okay. Whew. That's good. It's a strategy. And a
Strategy.
strategy isn't always a quick fix. It's understanding, I remember when I first started in entrepreneurship, one of my mentors told me, and this is going to sound probably inappropriate, but uh, building your business is like dating, right? So it's like, and he said from a man's perspective, it's like chasing tail, right? You have to do, like, you got to do the relationship building, you got to do the courting, you got to do all of the things before. And so oftentimes people come at it thinking like, hey, I meet you today, I get some money tomorrow, but like there's a whole process. And so when you said 2026, it's like, oh wow, so that's like not next year. That's right. And so just thinking about all that has to happen, right? Because you're not dormant until 2026. There's a lot of footwork that has to happen, a lot of shaking hand and kissing babies to get you to the point that you are even situated for 2026, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. No, that's
And before we move on, like, please, Dr. Eugene, make sure people are they looking in the chat? Because there's some fire resources that are in this chat. So I just
Yes,
had to elevate that.
definitely. Definitely. If you have not already, please, I know we're having an engaging conversation, but like make sure you save the chat when we're done. If you haven't already copied these links, because this is the stuff that's really is going to get you there, right? The conversations are the tips and the tools, but the how is a lot of the resources that is being implemented or that is being shared in the chat. So I want to shift gears as we kind of talk about navigating like economic shifts, right? Because in addition to the political and the technical, which we'll dive more into, there's often economic shifts that are happening, and we're seeing a lot of that real time. And that can be very scary, right? Even with all the best kept strategies, with all the, the knowledge of policy, like it can be because there's so much unknown, right? And Mr. Davis said that before. A lot of things we're seeing is speculation, right? We really don't know what the future holds, right? And so as we kind of think about navigating that, I'm gonna kick it off with you, Mr. Davis, from a policy standpoint. What are some of those systematic changes are needed to better support businesses during economic downturn?
Another great question. I think a couple of things that come to mind for me are, I kind of think of it in two ways. So one, as a business, how do you try to support yourself, given that a downturn may or may not happen, and that's goes back to resiliency. Um, One thing that comes to mind for me there is kind of like reading the tea leaves and having a perspective on what's going to happen before it happens. And that's something I won't say I preach, but I talk about all the time is like you have your thesis, it's right or wrong, but like you're able to make bets that way. Um, so as a business, like obviously one thing that's happening in the predominant like overarching technical landscape right now, artificial intelligence and generative artificial intelligence is on the scene. One little anecdote I'd give there is like, if you look at how venture capitalists are thinking about this, the idea is that like you would have software spend historically, and that's kind of the market that everyone was going for. How can I, if there's 10 billion being spent on software in this space today, that's my total addressable market. How they're starting to shift now is you also have services spend, which is usually about 10 times larger than the actual software spend.
Mhm.
And that services spend is the new opportunity, right? So
Mhm.
the software spend is great. You want to go after that. But if that was a $10 billion opportunity, we really want that $100 billion opportunity, which is
Mhm.
made available potentially through tools like agentic workflows with generative AI. So I think that's one way to think about it, right? Like if that's the case, then how can everyone kind of adopt that mindset of I potentially have a 10 times bigger market? How do I tap into that?
Mhm.
I would say from a resiliency perspective, with respect to policy too, one thing that I've seen be really helpful for businesses is just like an outline from a government perspective, of course, an outline of the things that are going to be kind of important and continue to be invested in. So the White House put out a paper, I believe it was earlier this year, from just like an emerging tech perspective on
Mhm.
these are the things that we care about pretty
Mhm.
much from a White House perspective. And these are the things that we're going to continue to invest in. And that's a really strong signal, right? Because the US government is the biggest spender there is on the planet.
Yeah.
So that's a signal. Okay, these are the things that you care about, your top 10 to 15 with respect to technology. Am I in this space? If not, uh, going back to what was discussed earlier, is there a way that I can make like a small pivot to make sure that like something I'm doing is related to this? Are there partnerships I can form? Are there ways that I can rethink my business that might align to some of the things that are pointed out there? And obviously, you don't want to like turn your ship around 180 degrees. However, if you can kind of position yourself a little bit better, there are always kind of signals out there that you can pay attention to, both from like a policy perspective and an overarching like kind of VC or like capital pool perspective as well. So that's how I think about it.
No, I think that's good. That's good. And some of the things you mentioned earlier, Dr. White, in terms of you were speaking a little bit in terms of some of these signals. So what do you think are some of the economic indicators that Black entrepreneurs specifically should monitor to make informed decisions about scaling and pivoting their business?
Internally, cash flow, like just really looking and taking, time to be introspective, talk with your financial team. What does your cash flow look like? What's the aging date on these receivables that are floating out there? And then from an external perspective, what are some of the things that are impacting the payables coming into you? Like what are your clients experiencing, or what might your clients be experiencing that's impeding or adding this barrier on them paying you that invoice that you submitted, right? So that's like one two sides of one coin. But also really looking at knowing who your clients are and how do they generate the revenue that pays your invoices, keeping an eye or having someone from your team like really knowing where is their money flowing from, and then being, to the extent that you have the capacity, that you have the relationships, because maybe you don't have the capacity to keep your eye on these things, making sure that you're tapped into what's happening that's impacting their cash flow. So for example, with Concept Creative Group, in 2023, summer 2024, the majority of our clients were historically Black colleges and universities and happened to be in Florida. And my work is in diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Oh, bruh,
Okay, so
bruh.
like really understanding that what we call the pestle, political, economic, socio-economic, legal, technical, and environmental conditions, and then applying some of those things to what is happening. How do these conditions impact how your clients make money? Because that's going to impact how you develop cash flow or how you receive cash flow. And from there, is there a place where I can pivot to where these economic conditions are not as burdensome?
Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of synergy in terms of what you both are saying. Because Mr. David, you talked about how the White House set a strategy at the beginning of the year of what they're focusing on, right? And that has a direct impact on your cash flow, either yourself or your clients, from what I'm hearing from Dr. White. So I think it's from what I'm hearing, like collectively, is learning how to situate yourself, right? Leveraging this knowledge to know how to situate yourself to then take advantage of the changing tides. And it's really interesting. I worked with this a colleague of mine years ago, and when I first met him, he was doing some really innovative work. But then, as things were changing, people kept saying, "Hey, have you met this guy? He's doing." I'm like, "Yeah, wait, is he doing something new?" Oh, it's the same thing. He knew how to rebrand himself or repurpose, right? And so this dude like had a cash cow for like 15 years, and it was the same thing. I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie Zoolander, but it was like every time someone said, "Hey, there's this new innovation," I felt like I was taking crazy pills. Like, it's the same thing. He's been doing the same thing. Wait, like that's the hustle. Like he knew how to keep, like, oh, you guys like purple? It's purple. You like unicorns? It's a unicorn. But it was at the core of his innovation. It was the same thing, but he knew how to like realign himself with whatever was priority in terms of his collaborators, his funders, his customers, right? And so I'm from what I'm hearing you guys say is from a policy perspective and as a business perspective in terms of working with customers and clients is you need to learn how to adopt the same skill set. So passing this to you, Rose, right? How do we recommend small businesses weather uncertainty while maintaining growth in the government contracting space?
Um, how do we weather? So one, leveraging what we can leverage right now, because a lot of these policy changes or potential changes that may or may not happen are going to take some time. So it's not going to be when is inauguration? The 21st?
20th.
Yeah, it's not going to happen like the next day. It's going to take some time for some of these changes to happen. So again, for me, from my business partners, we're taking advantage and literally like, you know, taking advantage of the things that we can right now. If there's certifications that you need to get them now before they go obsolete. Okay. Once you get them, have a plan that as soon as you get them, you start leveraging those certifications. So that way you can go and secure yourself some contracts, again, with partnering with others before any of these changes take place. The other thing I say, I mean, that's in the government contracting world, but I'll even go above that. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. We've talked about that, right? This should be your standard anyways, not just for this, evolving political landscape. This should always be your standard, but you need to diversify your business model. You should have a good spread from, B to B to B, B to C, B to G, B to government, B to corp, have a good spread. And not only that, but also when it comes to your passive and your active revenue. The gentleman that you were just talking about, Dr. Eugene, that's because I 100% know he had those things in his arsenal. He's proactive. We have a tendency, unfortunately, due to time limitations, where we are in our business is to be reactive. We don't take the time to sit there and work on our businesses and build out strategies that we don't necessarily need to put out now. We don't have to have the strategies. We can have the designs, the frameworks there and ready to go and implement. We don't have to have everything built out, but just have the mindset and understanding and have something to say. If it goes this way, I'm here. If it goes to the west, I'm here. Build out what it looks like, and as soon as you see, and also be tapped in. We have a tendency to not be tapped in. There's a lot of times the evidence that something's going to happen was already out there. We just didn't know. We weren't tapped in. We didn't see the article talking about these different changes. I'll just give you an example. There was something that there was a person elected to a certain space that was a warning. I believe it was a warning, and what I believed happened. But that person was elected to that position, but it was very quiet. There was 2 articles on it. No one else knew about it. And the reason I found out is because I use AI to go and pull information from on keywords that impact my business, and I have it pulling in. And now I'm all seeing things that impact my business, like hyper focused on it. Again, we're not tapped in. We're not looking at information. And a lot of times, by the time some of these things come out on mainstream media, it's too late. So be tapped in, be proactive, have strategies and different strategies available for your business, regardless of what ways that it can go. Make sure you're thinking about what can happen. And also just be ready, as soon as something happens, go and take action. Don't wait to see what everybody else is going to do. So.
Yeah, no. And I think, Rose, you brought us into the last topic I want us to touch on is the rising changes of technology and the impact on business. One of the quotes I've heard recently is the next $1 billion, and this isn't recent, it's like about a year ago, but the next $1 billion company will be ran by 3 people, right? And everything else will be basically leveraged by your technology. So you'll maintain that visionary, that product leader, and one other person on that team, but your 20-person team will now be ran by your technical tools. And so we're seeing now with the rapid growth of AI, how it is taking, and if you think about the same thing as in terms of a lot of our technological tools, right? It's, I won't say eliminating jobs because we don't want to do fear mongering. It's definitely changing, right? The substantial roles in our businesses and jobs. Another famous quote that I like to use is people don't resist change, they resist loss. Right. And that's kind of what a lot of people's stance has been on this AI. Initially it was it'll be short lived or it'll be, and now everyone's kind of like, oh no, oh no. And I don't think it's necessarily that the fear of AI is so much of the tool, the devices themselves, but it is going to drastically change the way we do business and how we think about what us and our customers think about value, right? And the value we provide, right? And so I want us to kind of have a bit of a conversation on that in terms of, and I'll start off with you, Rose, since that's where you ended, with this rise of AI and other technological advances. How are you seeing small businesses, especially in the contracting space, integrate these technologies into their daily operations?
Right. So one of the things I do is actually go around and talk to small businesses about leveraging AI within their business. And before I answer, I just want to, because I know there's no right answer. It's just, your perspective. And so my perspective is AI is not going to take over, but your competitor who's leveraging AI and you're not is. Okay, so I believe that AI can only exist if we're here and we have the human intelligence is here. And so we have to think about our competitors and truly get out of our comfort box. I think that's what it is. I don't, it's not necessarily that folks are scared of change. They're scared of having to get out of that comfort box that they've been in for so long and have to re-innovate themselves and either underestimate what they can truly innovate themselves to, or just not want to innovate themselves. So what I've been seeing is individuals taking a extra look and understanding the importance of their data. That's the biggest thing. Because even to get to AI, you got to understand your data. You got to understand your processes. So even that, which again, when you think about it, should be standard, but we understand that a lot of businesses start, not necessarily having all their I's dotted and their T's crossed. But now they have to go back and number one, understand their processes, build out their SOPs, right? Look for ways to improve it, understand their data, because you got to have all of that before you try to insert AI into your business, because you got to understand where it needs to go. What are you improving? How is it going to work? And so I see individuals, it's almost like a byproduct of, leveraging AI. They're all of a sudden optimizing what I call their business. They're truly understanding it. They're identifying areas for improvement. And they're now not only seeing the being able to leverage AI and being elevating themselves when it comes to their competitors, but because they've done this deep dive into their business, they're now improving their business, right? And then getting the rewards off of that and really improving their products and their services, and their clients are happier. So I have seen that. Use a lot of individuals use it in marketing. And so you see a lot more content coming out, people tapping into their creativity for the content, which is amazing. What's the next big content creation that's out there? And also knowing their numbers. Now they're coming, to understanding where their clients are coming from, being able to improve on their customer focus, being able to understand better where their customers actually exist, understanding their numbers when it comes to their financial business. So it's not even just AI for the services that they give to their clients, but AI for their business themselves. And so that's what I've been seeing a lot more is them, these businesses that are coming out and being basically improved to be more resilient for what's coming down the pipeline.
Okay. And Mr. Davis, I know you got to slip away soon, so I want to get one more question out of you in terms of what role do you think in terms of policy frameworks play in ensuring equitable access and adopting of new technology?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to try to collapse these two answers. I do have one thought on the previous question as well. I would think about like the marginal cost of things from a business perspective. So like what you'll see with AI is like regardless of how good it ends up being, like if you stop development right now, the marginal cost of things will continue to decrease. So like the marginal cost of text, we're seeing that with images, we're seeing that with videos, we see that with code, we'll see that with policy, we'll see that with everything. So like you can kind of follow those curves to see where you land on it and like opportunities to optimize. So that's one thing. Um, I would say in terms of policy frameworks are really kind of what drive DC in many ways. So a lot of people tend to think that like all the ideas that come from Congress or come from these state institutions originated within those institutions. What you'll find is like you'll usually have some flag in the sand planted by various organizations. Those can be nonprofits, those could be lobbyists, those could be like whatever external organizations those are.
Mhm.
And they'll kind of lay out a vision. For instance, I can say the name OpenAI this week. There was a few pieces that came out that were saying they proposed some energy solutions in the future and kind of the energy needs that the US will need to keep up with in order to continue kind of what's happening with generative models at the moment. So they put that out there. Eventually, that may or may not turn into a bill somewhere, but they kind of plant that flag in the sand. So, kind of turning that to the equitable lens once again, it's really about ideas.
Mhm.
So you don't need to be able to write the legal text of an idea for that idea to be taken up. It's really just thinking through like, is there a way that policy can play in this space? If so, here's a high level theme, right? So like an example is my thesis could be in order for people for more underrepresented groups to be successful in technology, we need more apprenticeship programs. And you can literally start with something that high level and then start to dwindle it down to like, okay, and then how would this be operationalized? What kind of apprenticeship programs do we need to set up? What verticals do we need to look into? Those kind of things. And you can literally put out like that set of ideas, get it in front of the right people. And then
Mhm.
internally, they'll turn that into the text that you need for that to be a bill or whatever it might turn into, an amendment. But we don't necessarily need to be able to write that ourselves. There are ways to get out ideas out there otherwise and get them taken up so that they can be swept into legislation.
Okay, good, good, good. And before you hop off, give me your top three recommendations for small businesses that want to thrive and remain resilient. Like, shoot it at us.
Ooh, top three. That's a great question. I would say one, kind of going to what Rose was saying earlier, you really have to think about like ways to optimize your business. So that goes uh, from small business to like the largest businesses. How do you think about the processes that you run? Where's efficiency, where's inefficiency? And how can you drive out that inefficiency as much as possible? So that's one thing. The second thing is connecting, whether that be through partnerships with other organizations, people at other organizations. Like you're you can only get so far alone. So the connections are really what propel businesses, in my opinion. I think the third thing is taking advantage of this new wave of technology. Some people are frightened by it. There's a lot of fear, as we were going to before. There's change that comes along with it. But on the other side of that, there are like massive opportunities that are coming. I was talking to someone yesterday, and they pretty much was saying this is like a land grab. Like if you're thinking about Western expansion 100 years ago, over 100 years ago, 150 years, it's there's land out here. I don't even know what I'm going to do with it, but I'm going to get it. Right. So like a lot of people are like taking the tools, trying to build something, and then moving toward it. And you'll figure it out. Like these things will change over time. And you can change along with them, but it's really about getting some skin in the game. So that's what I would recommend.
All right, we lost Wanda, but thank you, Ish. I know you have to go. Thank you for those top three.
It was great.
Absolutely.
Oh, she's back.
All right, bye all.
Bye.
Technology, always. Did we? Okay, yes. So I'm sure you all will share with me what I missed on that piece.
It was good stuff.
Yeah, the last part, his last one was how technology was like a land grab, and he was just continuing that point.
Okay, yes. And I totally agree with that one. And so I'm going to go back to the previous question for you, Dr. White, in terms of opportunities. If you can point to some of the opportunities that exist for Black entrepreneurs to leverage emerging tech trends and create sustainable and scalable ventures.
I love what Rose was sharing. So most of us have probably already heard about or playing around with Centra. And so this is another AI tool, and their flag, their like motto is your first 12 AI employees. So to Rose's point about you need to have like SOPs in place, you need to have like some of your language in place. One of the features of Centra is that your 12 employees, and they all have different skill sets, will ask you a different question about your business every day. Let me
Yeah.
tell y'all how I have like 45 questions piled up because I've never had to think about some of these things, some of the systems and processes. So I'm on this end, like I don't feel like answer this question today because I don't already have that answer. But it really demonstrates the need for not working, and we hear this, right? Work on your business and not in
Mm.
your business, right? And that is such like now it's glaring me in the face that I've been working in the business. Like I love what I do. I've been working in the business, but I haven't built out, I haven't like been accountable enough to the future of Concept Creative Group, of the future state that I want to create for my clients, because I hadn't been working on the business as diligently as I should. So now when these opportunities are presenting themselves to scale, right? I have to like go back and actually do the thing, like put the system, document the process, get it from out of here, get it on paper so that when I get human employees and not just AI employees, that transfer of knowledge is seamless. So in the wealth building process, especially from a dynastic wealth perspective, there is a pillar of wealth referred to as the wealth of knowledge. And if we're going to create sustainable businesses, we have to be prepared for succession planning. Succession
Mhm.
plannings happen because of a transfer of something. And in this case, it should be a transfer of knowledge.
Hmm. Yes, that's very powerful. You touched on something that I really want to just jump into really quickly, which is when you talked about like using Centra and it asks you a question a day. And we think about a lot of minority businesses or solopreneurs, and they're already wearing all of the hats. And though AI or technology presents an opportunity to help them not be spread so thin, there's still a learning curve, right? And so, though I would appreciate a sense of them asking me 45 questions, that just a thought of that gives me anxiety, where then it's just kind of like, yeah, I'm not, no, put me
Wait,
in Stone Ages, I can't live like that, right? So
they only ask one question a day. I've just let them pile up.
right, right. And I think that's a good point because there's so many of these different tools, and they even for example, I use a lot of different AIs, and when I'm just doing a basic editing of some text, right? It'll say, and I'll ask like, I'll go to back and forth, do my writing, and then I'll ask a basic question like, what are the weaknesses? Well, here are 20 different things. I don't have time for that. I mean, if you tell me like fix some grammar here or there, some subject verb agreement, but now you're doing like deep fundamental, like, your logic is, wait, no, I need this out in 10 minutes. I can't, right? And so when you think about a lot of these different tools, they're forcing us to think deeper in a way that we just don't even have capacity for. Like, I would love to be that person that could think about all my business processes on that deep, profound level. I don't have the mental capacity for that, right? And so that's another element that I think is often missed, right? Like, you don't have to drink from a fire hydrant all at one time, right? It's a marathon, not a sprint, but still the thought of it becomes very daunting. So I want to kind of jump to you, Rose, on some of that in terms of, and this is as well, I'll kind of close this section out. If you can kind of speak a little bit to that, recommendations for small businesses aiming to thrive and remain resilient.
You froze a little bit. Can you repeat your question?
Oh, darn, sorry.
It's, you're fine.
uh, I said, what are your recommendations on small, like speaking also to, there's all this tech and we have limited capacity. What are some of your recommendations for small businesses that want to thrive and remain resilient?
So my recommendation is number, just like how you stated, take it slow. In all honesty, in regards to all the tools that are out there, the one I know everybody's gonna know, the one that I suggest you start with is ChatGPT. And I say that because just like how you're talking about, oh, how do you ask the questions, not wanting all this. I believe that Chat GPT allows you to set the tone. I think a lot of times when we come in, folks don't realize you're not working for AI, AI works for you. And so you need to command it. And so individuals, and I've had, clients who are like, timid almost when they're talking to Chat GPT. I'm like, no, this is your friend, or this is your whoever you need it to be. You could talk to it any way you want. Name it, have that conversation, talk to it. I've had to go like, I literally said, I didn't ask you for this. I didn't ask you for this. Please give it to me the way I ask it. I wanted this, and I'll clarify. I wanted this. I need it short, and I'm short on time. Look. I'm so sorry, Rose. Here it is. How you asked it for, and you got to be. It's real, but again, that's your tool. It should be working for you. You shouldn't be, not the other way around. So start off with Chat GPT because I definitely believe that there's Again, I've talked to it, on different levels. There's days where I'm tired and I don't have the big words and I need this to be done. And you're going to get it in the South Florida, slash Haitian slash tired mama, verbiage that you're going to get into. And it understands me because you're building it, or you're pouring into it for it to understand you. So definitely start with ChatGPT. The other thing about so many AI tools, sometimes my eyes glaze over. Before, other than ChatGPT, look at the AI tools that are in the tools that you're already using. Yeah. Canva has AI. You don't have to keep getting more. Start with that. Wix has AI. I love Wix AI generator when it comes to images. It's been the best one from the ones that I've utilized, and it's in Wix. It's not an additional thing that you have to now kind of burden yourself with another login and whatever. So look at the AI tools that are already existing, and I'm gonna tell you, I like Copilot. Copilot is everywhere. If you use Microsoft Suite, it's everywhere. So start off small. Um, Understand, even before you get there, understand what you're going to use it. Some folks, I've seen them get on AI and I'm like, well, what you doing with it? Well, I don't know. Okay, figure out what you need. If you need content, if you need marketing, you're like, you know what? I got everything else. I just need marketing. Then identify the ones that are for marketing. Go with the one that is ease of use, user friendly, and start with that. Also start with, you can test out a lot of them with the different free versions. But I'd say this: be intentional about what you're using. I know I have clients who have literally 8 AI apps, and it actually did more harm than good. And it's not necessarily them or the AI. It's just that they're so quick to hop on and put it in there, and they didn't do the work of understanding why they're even using it, and also what's the return on investment. There's I think an article came out wanting to know, like, the return on investment on utilizing AI in your business. You should have a return on investment. What is it? That, to me, that should be marked, identified. One of the things for me, which was like the top one, is the hours I am saving when I'm looking at contracts and contract prospecting and also building proposals. That equals numbers and dollars. To me, that's what justifies on why I'm going to continue to use this app. And so definitely start slow, understand and have a return on investment if you're going to put it into your business. And don't overwhelm yourself on trying to keep up with the Joneses, if you will, by putting all this stuff in your company. Make it make sense. Be intentional about it.
Okay.
Mhm.
That reminds me of an old quote: start where you are, use what you have, and adding on your additional, be intentional. I think
Exactly.
is a logical. So, and Dr. White, I'm going to let you close us out with your top 3 recommendations for businesses to thrive and be resilient.
I think, well, first I have to preface my answer by introducing to others and reminding some that I'm a social scientist. So while I can speak to policy, I can read the numbers, I'm playing around with AI, I really look at everything through a human experience and through the lived experience of the people that we are engaged with. And so the first thing for me is remember that we are human, right? Like lead with compassion. Whatever the work is that you're doing, for me, first and foremost, is be compassionate in that work, because that compassion will take us to the second one, is focus on impact, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know who I was talking to that gathered me. They were like, it was actually an email from Zim Flores. I think she founded maybe Travel Noir. But in one of her emails, she said that she was led to this idea that instead of trying to make $1 million, be able to measure 1 million points of impact. So lead with compassion, focus on impact. And then the last thing, I would be remiss if I did not say this, is make sure that you have a plan to transfer the wealth that your business is generating. So not just to the next generation, but build a dynasty, like operationalize your dynasty and make sure that the next 3 generations of your family and your community will be taken care of by your compassion and your impact.
Awesome, awesome. I would like to thank our panelists for that amazing, just how much amazing knowledge that they willingly shared with us and just those parting points. And I apologize, I didn't catch all of Mr. Davis' parting points, so I won't go there. But just from Rose on start where you are, use what you have, be intentional. Dr. White, lead with compassion, focus on impact, make sure you have a plan to transfer wealth. I think this is, if you don't get anything else out of those sessions, being intentional, like these should be like post-its, right? Like on your on that you see every day to kind of remind you what is it that we're really out here doing. And so on that note, I'm going to pass it back over to Sabola.
Wow, this has been so phenomenal. I've been in the background just trying to pull down some of the notes and go into all the pieces in the chat. If you haven't taken an opportunity to go ahead and click those three buttons at the top of the chat to save today's chat with all the goodies that are there, you don't want to miss it. You want to go ahead and pull those pieces together and make sure that you're able to bring all of this home with you, right? Because all of this information is so valuable. And when you start to think about how you're going to digest it, right? Because it can be like a fire hose. I think I heard Dr. Eugene say that earlier. It can be like a fire hose. I want you just to kind of segment this out and really think about the priorities of what you have in your life and the things that are important to you. And then I want you to look at the information that has been shared and start with those things. Start with the things that align with those things that are important to you, and then move forward as you go along to all the other pieces as you deem them relevant to your work and all the things that are happening in your world. Wow. Everyone, thank you. Dr. Eugene, Rose, Dr. White, Ish. Oh my goodness, this has been such a powerful time. I just want to make sure that you all are connecting with our panelists, with our moderator. You can find them on social media. You can on LinkedIn. They're all on LinkedIn, so definitely find them in those spaces. And if you all want to drop your links in the chat to make it easier, please do so that we can make sure that everyone is connecting with you all and staying connected as we continue to move forward. Now, when we first started this conversation, I was sharing with you all that there's so many wonderful things that are coming through Black Innovation Leaders of Florida. And one of those awesome things is we have this wonderful partnership that is allowing us to be able to link people to Pan Hats and trademark class. And so we want to slip the link in the chat for you now. So if you know of anybody or you yourself that are like, hey, I want to get on board, I want to tap into this, I want to be able to take advantage of this, we want you to be able to do that right now. So the link is in the chat. Feel free to share it amongst your colleagues and friends. If you know someone who needs to figure out how to protect their inventions or understand how to protect their organization's identity or a trademark, please, please, please make sure that they take advantage of this resource as it's being shared out to you all. All right, everyone, you all have been such powerful, just such a powerful community. And if I have any closing thoughts or remarks that I would share, is one of the key things that I heard that was trending across the conversation today, and that is partnership, community, connection. And so I want to lift that as we navigate. We don't know what's going to happen, right? We're not sure about how things are going to flow. But I think the very uncertainty has this almost chaotic feel. And so I want you to lean in to your partners, your community, and your connections. And if you're feeling like, hey, I'm struggling with this a little bit, it's okay for you to pick up the phone and reach out to someone in your tribe and your connections to let them know that you need that lift. Because remember, rising tide raises all boats. And you might just be that rising tide to help raise the boats in your community and in your world. So I hope you will take this information, get involved, and be willing to take that front line. I think we heard a lot about getting involved from a political perspective, not just being political, but really getting involved in the legislative process and really, championing around legislation that really champions the work that you believe and you're confident with. And really those lists of caucus that came up earlier today. There's a lot of caucuses out there. So find one. Find one that fits you. Get involved and figure out what they're introducing and what you can lend yourself to Because remember, if you don't say anything, if you don't get involved, then you're definitely giving them permission to make big decisions on your behalf without you even knowing. So here's the thing, friends, let's get involved. Let's shape the world that we want to live in, and we have the power to do so. All right, I want to thank you all so much for your time. It's been a beautiful pleasure being with you all. Please be standing by for the recap of this and the repeat of this. We share it out on our social media channels. Don't forget to follow Black Innovation Leaders of Florida on LinkedIn to stay in tune for all the wonderful things that are going to be coming up in 2025. We just can't wait to serve you and to build this community together. All right, God bless you all. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk soon.
Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks.